When Zarathustra was 30 years old, he left his home in the lake of his home, and went into the mountains. Here he enjoyed his spirit and his solitude, and for 10 years did not tire of it. But at last a change came over his heart, and one morning he rose with it the dawn, stepped before the sun, and spoke to it thus: "You great star, what would your happiness be had for not those for whom you shine? For 10 years you have climbed to my cave. You would have tired of your light and of the journey had it not been for me and my eagle and my serpent. But we waited for you every morning, took your overflow from you, and blessed you for it. Behold, I am weary of my wisdom, like a bee that has gathered too much honey. I need hands outstretched to receive it. I would give away and distribute until the wise among men find joy once again in their folly, and the poor in their riches. For that I must descend into the depths, as you do in the evening when you go behind the sea, and still bring light to the underworld. You over-rich star, like you I must go under, go down, as it is said by men, to whom I want to descend. So bless me then, you quiet eye that can look even upon an all too great happiness without envy. Bless the cup that wants to overflow, that the water may flow from it golden, and carry everywhere the reflection of your delight. Behold, this cup wants to become empty again, and Zarathustra wants to become man again." Thus Zarathustra began to go under. Zarathustra descended alone from the mountains, encountering no one. But when he came into the forest, all at once there stood before him an old man who had left his holy cottage to look for roots in the woods. Could it be possible the old saint in the forest has not yet heard anything of this, that God is dead? I teach you the overman. Man is something that shall be overcome. What have you done to overcome him? All beings so far have created something beyond themselves. And do you want to be the ebb of this great flood, and even go back to the beasts rather than overcome man? What is the ape to man? A laughing-stock or a painful embarrassment? And man shall be just that for the overman, a laughing-stock or a painful embarrassment. You have made your way from worm to man, and much in you is still worm. Once you were apes, and even now, too, man is more ape than any ape. Whoever is the wisest among you is also a mere conflict and cross between plant and ghost. But do I bid you become ghosts or plants? Behold, I teach you the overman. The overman is the meaning of the earth. Let your will say, the overman shall be the meaning of the earth. I beseech you, my brothers, remain faithful to the earth, and do not believe those who speak to you of otherworldly hopes. Poison mixers are they, whether they know it or not. Despisers of life are they, decaying and poisoned themselves, of whom the earth is weary, so let them go. Once the sin against God was the greatest sin, but God died, and these sinners died with him. To sin against the earth is now the most dreadful thing, and to esteem the entrails of the unknowable higher than the meaning of the earth. Once the soul looked contemptuously upon the body, and then this contempt was the highest. She wanted the body meager, ghastly, and starved. Verily, a polluted stream is man. One must be a sea to be able to receive a polluted stream without becoming unclean. Behold, I teach you the overman. He is the sea, in him your great contempt can go under. What is the greatest experience you can have? It is the hour of the great contempt, the hour in which your happiness too arouses your disgust, and even your reason and your virtue. Where is the lightning to lick you with its tongue? Where is the frenzy with which he should be inoculated? Behold, I teach you the overman. He is this lightning, he is this frenzy. Man is a rope, tied between beast and overman, a rope over an abyss, a dangerous across, a dangerous on the way, a dangerous looking back, a dangerous shuddering and stopping. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not an end. What can be loved in man is that he is an overture and a going under. I love those who do not know how to live except by going under, for they are those who cross over. I love the great despisers because they are the great reverers and arrows of longing for the other shore. I love those who do not first seek behind the stars for a reason to go under and be a sacrifice, but who sacrifice themselves for the earth, that the earth may some day become the overman's. I love him who lives to know, and who wants to know so that the overman may live some day, and thus he wants to go under. I love him who works and invents to build a house for the overman and to prepare earth, animal, and plant for him, for thus he wants to go under. I love him who loves his virtue, for virtue is the will to go under, and an arrow of longing. I love him who does not hold back one drop of spirit for himself, but wants to be entirely the spirit of his virtue. Thus he strides over the bridge as spirit. I love him who makes his virtue his addiction and his catastrophe. For his virtue's sake he wants to live on and live no longer. I love him who does not want to have too many virtues. One virtue is more virtue than two, because it is more of a noose on which his catastrophe may hang. I love him whose soul squanders itself, who wants no thanks and returns none, for he always gives away and does not want to preserve himself. I love him who is abashed when the dice fall to make his fortune and ask, "Am I then a crooked gambler?" For he wants to perish. I love him who casts golden words before his deeds, and always does even more than he promises, for he wants to go under. I love him who justifies future and redeems past generations, for he wants to perish of the present. I love him who chastens his God, because he loves his God, for he must perish of the wrath of his God. I love him whose soul is deep, even in being wounded, and who can perish of a small experience. Thus he goes gladly over the bridge. I love him whose soul is over full, so that he forgets himself, and all things are in him. Thus all things spell his going under. I love him who has a free spirit and a free heart. Thus his head is the only entrails of his heart, but his heart drives him to go under. I love all those who are as heavy drops, falling one by one out of the dark cloud that hangs over men. They herald the advent of lightning, and as heralds they perish. Behold, I am a herald of the lightning and a heavy drop from the cloud, but this lightning is called overman. The time has come for man to set himself a goal. The time has come for man to plant the seed of his highest hope. His soil is still rich enough, but one day this soil will be poor and domesticated, and no tall tree will be able to grow in it. Alas, the time is coming when man will no longer shoot the arrow of his longing beyond man, and the string of his bow will have forgotten how to whir. I say unto you, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. I say unto you, you still have chaos in yourselves. Alas, the time is coming when man will no longer give birth to a star. Alas, the time of the most despicable man is coming. He is no longer able to despise himself. Behold, I show you the last man. What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star? Thus asks the last man, and he blinks. We have invented happiness, say the last men, and they blink. Then something happened that made every mouth dumb and every eye rigid. For meanwhile the tightrope walker had begun his performance. He had stepped out of a small door and was walking over the rope, stretched between the two towers, and suspended over the marketplace and the people. When he had reached the exact middle of his course, the small door opened once more, and a fellow in motley clothes, looking like a jester, jumped out and followed the first one with quick steps. "Forward, lame foot," he shouted in He shouted in an awe-inspiring voice, Forward, lazy bones, smuggler, pale-face, or I shall tickle you with my heel. What are you doing here between towers? The tower is where you belong. You ought to be locked up. You block the way for one better than yourself. And with every word he came closer and closer. But when he was but one step behind, the dreadful thing happened, which made every mouth dumb, and every eye rigid. He uttered a devilish cry, and jumped over the man who stood in his way. This man, however, seeing his rival win, lost his head in the rope, tossed away his pole, and plunged into the depth even faster, a whirlpool of arms and legs. The marketplace became as the sea when a tempest pierces it. The people rushed apart and over one another, especially at the place where the body must hit the ground. Zarathustra, however, did not move, and it was right next to him, and the body fell, badly maimed and disfigured, but not yet dead. After a while, the shattered man recovered consciousness and saw Zarathustra kneeling behind you. What are you doing here? He asked at last. I have long known that the devil would trip me. Now he will drag me to hell. Would you prevent him? By my honor, friend, answered Zarathustra. All that of which you speak does not exist. There is no devil and no hell. Your soul will be dead even before your body. Fear nothing further. Insight has come to me. Companions I need, living ones, not dead companions and corpses, whom I carry with myself wherever I want to. Living companions I need, who follow me because they want to follow themselves wherever I want. And you, my first companion, farewell. I buried you well in your hollow tree. I have hidden you well from the wolves. But I part from you. The time is up. Between dawn and dawn a new truth has come to me. No shepherd shall I be, nor grave-digger. Never again shall I speak to the people. For the last time have I spoken to the dead. I shall join the creators, the harvesters, the celebrants. I shall show them the rainbow and all the steps to the overman. To the hermits I shall sing my song, to the lonesome and the twosome. And whoever still has ears for the unheard of, his heart shall become heavy with my happiness. To my goal I will go, on my own way. Over those who hesitate and lag behind I shall leap. Thus let my going be their going under. This is what Zarathustra told his heart when the sun stood high at noon. Then he looked into the air, questioning, for overhead he heard the sharp call of a bird. And behold, an eagle soared through the sky in wide circles, and on him there hung a serpent, not like prey, but like a friend, where she kept herself wound around his neck. These are my animals, said Zarathustra, and was happy in his heart, the proudest animal under the sun, and the wisest animal under the sun. They have gone out on a search. They want to determine whether Zarathustra is still alive. Verily do I still live? I found life more dangerous among men than among animals. On dangerous paths walks Zarathustra. May my animals lead me. Of 3 metamorphoses of the spirit I tell you how the spirit becomes a camel, and the camel a lion, and the lion finally a child. There is much that is difficult for the spirit, the strong reverent spirit that would bear much. The difficult and the most difficult are what its strength demands. What is difficult? Asks the spirit that would bear much, and kneels down like a camel wanting to be well loaded. What is most difficult, O heroes? Asks the spirit that would bear much, that I may take it upon myself and exult in my strength. Is it not humbling oneself to wound one's haughtiness, letting one's folly shine to mock one's wisdom? Or is it this, parting from our cause when it triumphs, climbing high mountains to tempt the tempter? Or is it this, feeding on the acorns and grass of knowledge, and for the sake of truth, suffering hunger in one's soul? Or is it this, being sick and sending home the comforters and making friends with the dead who never hear what you want? Or is it this, stepping into filthy waters when they are the waters of truth, and not repulsing cold frogs and hot toads? Or is it this, loving those who despise us, and offering a hand to the ghost that would frighten us? All these most difficult things the spirit that would bear much takes upon itself. Like the camel that burdened speeds into the desert, thus the spirit speeds into the desert. In the loneliest desert, however, the second metamorphosis occurs. Here the spirit becomes a lion who would conquer his freedom, and be master in his own desert. Here he seeks out his last master. He wants to fight him in his last god. For ultimate victory he wants to fight with the great dragon. Who is the great dragon whom the spirit will no longer call Lord and God? Thou shalt is the name of the great dragon. But the spirit of the lion says, I will. Thou shalt lies in his way, sparkling like gold, an animal covered with scales, and on every scale shines a golden. Thou shalt. My brothers, why is there a need in the spirit for the lion? Why is not the beast of burden, which renounces and is reverent, enough to create new values that even the lion cannot do? But the creation of freedom for oneself, for new creation, that is, within the power of the lion. The creation of freedom for oneself in a sacred no, even to duty. For that, my brothers, the lion is needed. To assume the right of new values, that is the most terrifying assumption for a reverent spirit, that would bear much. Verily to him he is praying in a master of, and a matter for a beast of prey. He once loved thou shalt as most sacred. Now he must find illusion and caprice even in the most sacred. That freedom must his love may become his prey. That the lion is needed for such prey. But say, what can the child do that even the lion could not do? The child is innocence, and forgetting, a new beginning, a game, a self-propelled wheel, a first movement, a sacred yes. For the game of creation, my brothers, a sacred yes is needed. The spirit now wills his own will, and he who had been lost to the world now conquers his own world. 10 times a day you must overcome yourself. 10 times you must reconcile yourself again with yourself. For overcoming is bitterness, and the unreconciled sleep badly. Well, what were your 10 overcomings, and what were your 10 reconciliations, and the 10 truths, and the 10 laughters, with which your heart edified itself? Blessed are the sleepy ones, for they shall soon drop off. Thus spoke Zarathustra. On the afterworldly. At one time, Zarathustra, too, cast his delusion beyond man, like all the afterworldly. The work of a suffering and tortured God. The world then seemed to me. A dream and the world then seemed to me. And the fiction of a God, colored smoke before the eyes of a dissatisfied deity. Good and evil, and joy and pain, and I and you, colored smoke, this seemed to me, before creative eyes. The Creator wanted to look away from himself, and so he created the world. Good and evil, and joy and pain, and I and you, colored smoke, this seemed to me before creative eyes. The Creator wanted to look away from himself, and so he created the world. Drunken joy it is for the sufferer to look away from his suffering and to lose himself. Drunken joy and loss of self the world once seemed to me. This world, internally imperfect, the image of an internal contradiction, an imperfect image, a drunken joy for its imperfect creator. Thus the world once appeared to me. Thus I too once cast my delusion beyond man, like all the afterworldly. Beyond man indeed. Alas, my brothers, this God whom I created was man-made in madness, like all gods. Man he was, and only a poor specimen of man and ego. Out of my own ashes and fire this ghost came to me, and verily it did not come to me from beyond. What happened, my brothers? I overcame myself, the sufferer. I carried my own ashes to the mountains. I invented a brighter flame for myself. And behold, then, this ghost fled from me. Now it would be suffering for me, and agony for the recovered to believe in such ghosts. Now it would be suffering for me and humiliation. Thus I speak to the afterworldly. It was suffering and incapacity that created all afterworlds. This and that brief madness of bliss, which is experienced only by those who suffer most deeply. Weariness that wants to reach the ultimate with one leap, with one fatal leap, the poor ignorant weariness that does not want any more. This created all gods and afterworlds. Believe me, my brothers, it was the body that despaired of the body and touched the ultimate walls with the fingers of the deluded spirit. Believe me, my brothers, it was the body that despaired of the earth and heard the belly of being speak to it. It wanted to crash through these ultimate walls with its head, and not only with its head over there to that world, but that world is well concealed from humans, that dehumanized and human world which is heavenly nothing, and the belly of being does not speak to humans at all, except as a human. Verily, all being is hard to prove, and hard to induce to speak. Tell me, my brothers, is not the strangest of all things proved most nearly? Indeed, this ego and the ego's contradictions. Indeed, this ego and the ego's contradiction and confusion still speak most honestly of its being. This creating, willing, valuing ego, which is the measure and value of all things. And this most honest being, the ego, speaks of the body and still wants the body, even when it poetizes, and raves and flutters with broken wings. It learns to speak ever more honestly, this ego, and the more it learns, the more words and honors it finds for body and earth. A new pride my ego taught me, and this I teach men, no longer to bury one's head in the sand and heavenly things, but to bear it freely in earthly head, which creates a meaning for the earth. A new will I teach man, a new will I teach men, to will this way, which men, a new will I teach men, to will this way, which man has walked blindly, and to affirm it, and no longer to sneak away from it like the sick and decaying. It was the sick and decaying who despised body and earth,